Alright, so let's jump in and start with the speech that Euron made during his victory of the King's Moot for the Salt Throne, and particularly the line in reference to his brother Balon, "He led us into two wars we couldn't win." Why is this any different now, just because he's king? Any leader can request for ships to be built, unless he's developed skills and found weapons that would be significantly, more powerful in the war to come. Let's do a bit of digging, and I think if we look at Euron's background a little bit, I think it's important that we look at why he was away from the Iron Islands all this time, where he's been, and why he's all of a sudden decided to return to not only just take the Salt Throne, but to immediately seek to conquer Westeros. His introduction to the show was pretty badass, with him killing Balon on the bridge, but in the books, it's also kind of revealed that he's unpredictably wild, with extreme tendencies for violence. Something that really shows just how kind of disturbed he is as an individual is he has many brothers, and he's actually sexually abused them and even murdered some of them and managed to get away with it. So we know that he has a calm madness about him, but what really makes him frightening to me is that he's also a proven battle commander with great intelligence. In the Greyjoy Rebellion, it was Euron who conceived the plan that resulted in the destruction and burning of the entire Lannister fleet at Lannisport. Eventually, Euron went a bit too far with his atrocities, and the reason why he was actually away from the Iron Islands all this time was because he was actually banished for raping and impregnating his brother's wife. So, not believing in kinslaying, the Ironborn exiled him. This actually led to Euron and his crew going on a huge pillaging and ravaging spree across the known world, but most notably in the cities of Asshai, which is where Melisandre's from, the smoky ruins of Valyria, which is the origin of many of the dragon rider families similar to the Targaryens. It was a very rich and prosperous civilization until the cataclysmic event only known as the Doom of Valyria, so clearly a lot of wealth and treasures were left behind. And then finally, to Karth, which is actually the home of the Warlocks, who are a group of magic practitioners. They regularly gather at the House of the Undying, which is where we saw Daenerys have the visions of Khal Drogo, and they are recognizable by their blue lips. And this is caused by their custom of drinking a substance known as Shade of the Evening. Now, something in the show that's not really explained is anything about the Warlocks, who they are and how they get their power, but we are introduced to two of them. The first one is Pyat Pree, who is one of the 13 in Karth, and he is the one who actually kidnaps Daenerys' dragons, and Daenerys tries to imprison her because in their presence, his magic and all Warlocks' magics are more powerful. He was able to teleport, he could control multiple clones, give people visions, and clearly it shows how effective they were when he was able to just slaughter the entire Karth Council single-handedly. The second is an unidentified Warlock who tries to assassinate Dany in Astapor when she first gets to Astapor, only to be stopped by Sir Barristan Selmy. Now, we saw this little girl jump off the edge of the pier into water, only, when the camera panned over, for her to seemingly disappear and then reappear in another location. So, the reason why I'm actually, talking about the Warlocks in particular here, it's something for me that's really important to note, is the way Euron is introduced to the show. So we see them in the storm on the bridge, confronting one another, and there are a few words that are exchanged between the two of them. So Balon asks Euron, I heard that you lost your mind during a storm, and that the crew had to tie you to the mast, which Euron just freely admits to happening. So then Balon tries to taunt him further by asking him what Ironborn loses his senses during a storm, to which Euron replies, "I am the Storm Brother." Now, what if he meant this literally? I mean, it would be quite a good introduction to this character, and also a bit of a hidden meaning as to potentially what's to come. Now, something we know from the books and while he was on his travels is that he kidnapped 4 of the Warlocks whilst he was in Karth, and he stole a hell of a lot of stock of their Shade of the Evening, because in the books he's actually described as having pale blue lips, so he's definitely been consuming this. What if, during his time at the sea, he began to actually drink the shade of the evening whilst trying to, force the Warlocks to teach him their magics. And it was that was being described as what was driving him delirious, when he was seeing visions and potentially even testing out some of his powers. What if he has the power to bring the storm? Now, what ties this up for me is the fact that just after this, he cut the tongues out of all of his crew. Now, this wasn't because, he was punishing them for tying him up. This was because they took a vow of silence, hence why his ship that he captains is called the Silence. Now move slightly forward in time to the event where he throws Balon over the bridge, and what was happening that night. There was a raging storm going on in the background, that served as the perfect disguise for him to murder his brother. Again, what if he was controlling that particular storm? Now, the next thing I want to look at is what potential weapons he might have. So let's again go and look at the King's Moot and some of the speeches he made. So again, when he's talking about Daenerys, he specifically mentions that she has 3 large dragons. Now in the book, when he's talking about conquering Westeros, he doesn't mention Daenerys, but he does tell his people that he will conquer the world using dragons. So, as well in the books, we know that he's found a horn called Dragonbinder. We're yet to see it in the TV show, but let's consider this. Right now, Daenerys has everything. She has 3 dragons, probably twice the size of any army in Westeros, an amazing council around her, and as things stand, nothing is going to beat that, unless Euron is the game changer. If Dragonbinder does exist, to me it would make perfect sense why he's seeking out Daenerys' dragons, whether, it was with her or not. Let's look at the last line that he delivers to win the King's Moot. He specifically says, "I was not born to be king. I paid the iron price, and here I stand." Meaning, he basically took, the role of the king by killing his brother. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that's about to go and be Daenerys' little bitch, or with Cersei, in fact. I just think he's the kind of guy that's going to do what he wants, and when he wants. And if he has this horn to bind dragons to his will, remove that from Daenerys' army, whether, they're then under his command or not, she becomes a lot less powerful. She could potentially even lose most of the people who are even following her right now. But I think this is what's going to help him with knocking on the door for Cersei. He can't go there empty-handed. This is something that he can present to her, something that's going to change the war to come and make it a hell of a lot more interesting. But finally for me, there's 2 things going on here. Because if he has this Dragonbinder, wants to seize control of dragons, what makes him stronger? Being in the presence of dragons. This is if he has become a Warlock. This would be the perfect circle for as to why he has come back now, because he has magical properties like a Warlock, and dragons make him stronger, and he's found a weapon to take the dragons. This would set up for a perfect battle, and it would make him very, very strong. And if this was the case, and as with my previous theory I posted a few days ago, if Baelish does kidnap Sansa and bring her back to King's Landing, it would just tie up nicely for the North to then have to march on the South, maybe potentially help Daenerys out of a very bad situation. Because we all know the show cannot end with Cersei or Euron, unfortunately. They're not interested in saving the world from the White Walkers. But we do know that this cannot surely be so easy that Daenerys will just take everything that she wants, like it was just no effort whatsoever. Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, then please make sure you give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, check out my last video on who might die in Season 7. Until tomorrow, peace!